Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 5, Episode 10, Rapture. This episode aired December 30th, 1996. It's almost New Year's Eve.
Very close.
Before we talk about this one, anything to say about last week's episode?
No, it was perfect.
I think that was The Ascent. I didn't put it in my notes, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
Yes, it was The Ascent.
Yeah.
It was the Odd Couple episode of Deep Space Nine.
The one that you apologized for liking. I liked it.
I didn't think I apologized.
You seemed to feel like you needed to explain it. Your thumbs up needed some caveats.
It was a lighthearted episode. Although, in my alternative Star Trek timeline, I did suggest, wouldn't Walter Matthau have been awesome as Odo?
It would have been an interesting acting choice.
Yes.
He would have been quite old. Do you mean a younger Walter Matthau?
I'll go with the older one playing a young guy.
All right. Enough about old movies or TV shows.
Yes.
Well, no, that's not true. This is also an old TV show. Let's talk about this old TV show.
It's never old in my heart.
In the cold open, Dax, Sisko, and Major Kira are looking at a 20,000-year-old painting. Yes, 20,000-year-old painting of the lost ancient city of Bahala. Kira says they've been trying to force the Cardassian government to return this painting since the end of the occupation. Sisko points out the 11-meter-high spire, or really it's an obelisk, in the picture, saying that cities were built around them. They somehow mark the city's place in the cosmos, and the markings on the sides are supposedly coordinates to the city, but only 2 of the sides are visible, though you can clearly see the reflection of one of the sides is also in the picture.
Yeah, it's a little bit blurry, though. That's kind of hard to see.
Sisko wants it scanned into the computer before it gets packed off to a museum. He wants to have a go at trying to find the lost city, and Kira pipes up with Sokal's third prophecy, which says, only someone who has been touched by the prophets could find the ruins of Bahala. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, and Dax says, no pressure then.
Dax totally underwhelmed by the painting.
Oh, she is.
I think she would be me, right? Like when we went to Buckingham Palace and I'm like, it looks like a post office.
Yes, but I liked as well. I mean, she did say, I thought it would be a lot bigger.
I think this is going to be on Inappropriate Conversations with Jadzia Dax on the podcast. This week I saw a 20,000-year-old painting. Didn't look like much.
It was kind of small.
Yeah, I could have done better.
Do you think that's one of the problems if you're a Trill? If you've lived 7 lifetimes, do you end up becoming like Q when nothing really has any wonder or amazement anymore?
I imagine that's the risk. At the same time, she's the one who has fun at everything. She's the one who really enjoys things. So, I don't know, she's a bit of a contradiction.
Yeah. That's something to bring up on her podcast.
Yeah, for sure. Well, later we do see Sisko magnify the section with the obvious reflection and act like he's the first person to ever notice that there's a reflection. It's a reflection. Duh. Why is there a reflection anyway?
Well, you can paint a reflection.
You could, but would they not maybe do a little bit better job with the detail of what's in it?
Well, I
just questioned that part of it. Not that they couldn't.
Well, it was a waterfall, so I think it would have been significantly blurred by...
Okay, Mr. Headcanon. Next, Sisko takes the obelisk, at least a hologram version of it, to a holodeck and spends time staring at it and trying to enhance the markings from the reflection. Eventually, Quark comes in to tell him that it's 3 o'clock in the morning. He asks Quark to save the program for him, but when he starts prattling on about something completely perverted, Sisko's like, fine, I'll do it myself. But when he goes to pull the memory stick out of the console, there is a surge of electricity and Sisko is thrown to the floor, and Quark calls for emergency medical help.
The Bajorans call it a Bantaka Spire.
Like that's a generic term for it, or this particular one?
I believe it refers to this type of spire specifically.
I see. Okay.
I'd call it an obelisk. It looks like the founder obelisk.
It 100% looks like that obelisk we've had on before. As we go into the credits here, I guess we've reached the point in the timeline where the events of First Contact have happened.
Yes.
Because all of our uniforms have radically changed and nobody says anything about it. But you're like, wait a minute, that looks familiar.
Yeah, they just carry on like there's nothing changed here.
Yeah, no big deal. They also don't mention that Worf was nearly killed or that he went back in time. It's no big deal.
How was your trip?
It's fine. After the theme song, Odo drags Quark into security to arrest him for negligence. Even though Sisko is okay, Quark's holosuites were overdue for their maintenance. Quark blames Chief O'Brien because Rom is too busy on important station work to fix the holosuites. Odo finds this very amusing and he says, "Tell it to the magistrate."
Quark, of course, trying to blame someone else for his own failings.
Oh yeah, totally not my fault.
Yeah.
I think this is the scene where they were showing the names of the people on the show. I think this is where I saw that Louise Fletcher was on it, and I was like, woohoo! We haven't seen her in so long. I was excited to see her name.
It's hard not to in her portrayal of Winn.
I know, because I don't think she's been in a bad episode. Every time she's in an episode, we tend to like it.
Yeah.
I don't think you like the one where Bareil died as much.
I wasn't so keen on that.
Yeah, but I think other than that, she's always in the good ones. Or maybe she makes it the good one.
I think so.
In the infirmary now, Bashir says Sisko is fine, but he's getting readings of odd synaptic potentials. He asks Sisko if his uniform looks any brighter to him.
They don't actually talk about the uniforms being changed, but it was funny that Bashir specifically points that out. Anybody who's watched the show would go, hey, uniforms, what's the deal?
Yeah. No, I don't think brighter is how I would describe them. They look hotter, for sure. Like there's an added layer. Looks very warm.
Do I look like I'm about to pass out through heat stroke in this uniform?
Yeah.
Yeah, you do.
Well, anyway, Sisko says all the colors seem more intense and shapes are more focused.
Yeah.
And Bashir says it's post-neural shock syndrome. All external stimuli will seem more pronounced for a while, so he's going to put him on restricted duty for a few days. And he says, if you experience headaches, dizziness, or nausea, let me know right away. Then we go to, I think we went to Jake's quarters, and Jake made Sisko dinner. And although you're supposed to think that it was quite a feast, it's like this sad tray of melon and bread. And we see Sisko carefully, putting it on his plate and carving it up with a knife and fork, while Jake talks about Cassidy getting back from her 6-month prison sentence.
Sisko is totally distracted here. He is really not concentrating, and he's arranging his food on his plate.
Yeah, he's not reacting to Jake talking about Cassidy.
Yeah.
He's just very focused on what's in front of him, sort of playing with his food. And then he suddenly says he knows what the shapes are. And then they go from the shape he's made on his plate of his melon to the shape on the side of the obelisk as we go back to the holosuite, where he seems to now have decoded the third side, but not yet the fourth side.
Yes, he looks like he has most of the patterns on it.
Yes. But he gets interrupted now by a call from Admiral Whatley, who says the Federation has approved Bajor's petition into the Federation.
Yay!
The Bajorans want the agreement signed on the station, so Whatley says to spruce up that floating bicycle wheel of yours.
That seems like the kind of thing you would say about the station.
No, that's rude. It's a strip mall, not a bicycle wheel. Come on, Admiral Whatley.
Yes, that's so much better.
Get your strip mall together.
Put some banners up.
Put some bunting up. Yeah, and there is no bunting either. Come to think of it, they totally should have put up bunting. Well, now we go to a bustling Quark's, where Quark calls for a spotlight on 2 women on the 2nd level who dramatically drop a banner with a Klingon symbol on it. Oops.
And Worf reads, "Welcome Klingons."
Then he grabs the Federation banner and holds it up and everyone claps.
And Dax congratulates him for being prepared for any outcome.
Yeah, he thinks that this is going to be good for business. He's going to sell more root beer. He also thinks that more business means he'll hear more secrets.
And Worf points out that there is an ancient Klingon proverb which says, "You cannot loosen a man's tongue with root beer."
Right.
Is this like...
And only Nixon can go to China.
Yes! Is it the universal translator is turning whatever the context was of this proverb and making it into a human understandable form?
I imagine so, yes. Well, Kira comes in and asks if everyone is enjoying the party. For some reason, Dax is having a great time. She knows how to enjoy herself, and this again is where I'm imagining she covers all events on her podcast, Inappropriate Conversations with Jadzia Dax. Kira says 5 years ago she didn't think Bajor should join the Federation, but after her time on the station and dealing with Starfleet and mostly her time with the captain, she's become a believer. And then she asks where Sisko is, and Dax says, oh, he's back in the holosuite.
This is all part of that Kira progression, from her going for this fiercely nationalistic, independent Bajor Kira to seeing the advantages of the Federation and learning that they can work together, that this is good for Bajor. And it's sort of is a counterpoint to the end of season 1, where Neela and Kai Winn talked about how the Federation and Bajorans keep separate. And specifically at the end of that season, both Kira and Sisko are writing that report. And tellingly, on the next episode, the following season, if you remember, I brought up how the Bajorans and Starfleet were together in the bar and two people were walking in different uniforms together. And it's like, yeah, that you had that slow build. So this, I thought, worked. They've learned that there is benefit from this and that they have shared values.
Yeah, but also Kira has a number of examples of where Starfleet has gone out of their way to help her or out of their way to help Bajor. Yeah. She's watched Miles put himself in harm's way for a good cause.
Yeah.
So I think she's seen specific examples just from the crew on top of it.
Right, yeah.
And then also, she's full believer of the emissary part of the story, which I'm sure impacts a lot.
That might have more of an outsized impact to anything else.
So Kira enters the holosuite and finds Sisko in kind of a trance. She shakes him awake and he says he was in Bahala. He could hear the temple chimes.
Oh.
She says he was dreaming, but he says, no, he was really there.
Yeah.
He could even smell things that were going on around him and like taste things. For a moment, he understood it all. Bahala, the orbs, the occupation, the discovery of the wormhole, the coming war with the Dominion. Excuse me, I wrote that down. For one moment, he could see the pattern that held it all together. She says he was having a patemfar, or a sacred vision.
And also giving spoilers on the future show.
Yeah, I wanted to complain. Hello, spoiler. He said it felt wonderful. She asked how it all fits together, and he said he doesn't know. Someone woke him up. And then Chief O'Brien calls to say Kai Winn is on her way to the station, and he tells Kira to go and deal with her because he's going to keep working on the obelisk.
Yeah, and he tells her, make something up. That I thought was
he kind of waves his hand like, nah, you know what to do.
Is it just me, or is this the Avery that I absolutely love?
Well, I feel like only you can answer that question. I don't know why you're asking me to answer that question.
He is great here. He is so positive, and how this is just so impactful for him. Like where he says, he was there. Just loved it.
This, I think, is where he's most like you, where he's super obsessed with something and he's all in. His whole body and soul completely in, to the point where he doesn't even hear when somebody is talking to him, and he certainly doesn't care about anything else. The Sisko that I love is when he's like, you people need to get it together. That's my favorite Sisko.
The Sisko Management Podcast section.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Kai Winn arrives at the station, and she sees pregnant Kira, and she says she looks very sweet, and Kira says, looks can be deceiving. I mean, come on. What a great line.
What's with the purple dude in the background, by the way?
I don't know, kind of moping.
Well, do you see his way? He's like looking around at the ceiling and looking at the arches. What is he up to? He's
never been there before.
Yeah.
Who knows? Well, Kai Winn, of course, asks where the emissary is. She still isn't super keen on Bajor joining the Federation. She isn't sure they've had enough time on their own to be joining them. But she hasn't made up her mind yet. She says she awaits the will of the prophets, which just means I wait for everybody else to agree with me, as far as I can tell.
I'm pretty sure that, oddly enough, the will of the prophets matches exactly what she wants to happen.
Well, that's the problem with the will of the prophets line. You say it when you're in agreement, and you say it's not the will of the prophets when you're not in agreement.
Yeah. Anything she says should be taken with a grain of salt.
She's going to have some challenges yet to come in this episode. Sisko is working away on the obelisk when Cassidy enters, and he grabs her and kisses her. She wasn't sure how he was going to react.
I think that answers the question.
Well, I would think, though, they would have been in contact before this, but maybe not. But anyway, he's very excited, and he wants her to come to Bajor with him because he thinks he knows where Bahala is. She's happy to find out that he kept her quarters just as she left them, so obviously he was prepared for her to come back. But again, why didn't we talk about this? Was he not allowed to contact her while she was in prison? I don't know. It's all weird.
Well, what a great boyfriend. I mean, he kept her apartment, kept all her stuff, and he was super excited and happy to see her.
Except if he didn't contact her, I don't know how great it was. But okay, all right. Maybe as a captain in Starfleet, you shouldn't be calling prisoners. I don't know.
So you're dating a convicted prisoner right now who
Yeah.
was working against the Federation and Starfleet.
He's the one who had her arrested, so.
That's true. Oh, I thought it was really cute. I like this scene a lot.
Now they head to Bajor and they beam down into some dark caves and they wander around with flashlights.
And you know it's going to be something important because they're in a cave.
Absolutely.
Everything important happens in a cave.
That's right. While they're wandering around, Sisko gets a sudden headache, and he said Julian said headaches might be a side effect of his accident.
Uh-oh.
What Julian actually said was, if you get any headaches, let me know right away.
Yeah.
But anyway, they eventually find what looks like an opening blocked by some sediment, and Sisko fires his phaser at it and reveals the original Bahala obelisk.
I think this was also very lucky for Sisko, because the next scene could have been Julian in the infirmary with a dead Cassidy and a dead Sisko saying, yeah, he shot a wall out and the roof fell in on him.
Oh my god.
It did seem a little dangerous.
Yes, for sure. And also, did he tell anybody where he was going? Who knows right now? He's obsessed.
Oh, that's a good point.
Then we go to security, and Worf and Odo are debating the size of the quarters for the visiting dignitaries, while Kira daydreams about Bahala and how people have been looking for this city for 10,000 years, and Sisko found it in a couple of days.
Don't you think these kind of traditions that they're having to follow with the quarters because somebody was a captain and...
Yeah.
Don't you think that must be just driving Odo nuts? Because he's so practical. These kind of things would be like, why?
Yeah. And also so childish. It's... When I used to work at a large company, which shall remain nameless, there was a lot of that kind of nonsense that went on. Well, at this particular level, your office has to be bigger than the person at this particular level. And when that's important to you, you need to look at your life and reassess your priorities.
It's hard to disagree with that.
Worf does say something here about naval tradition, and I don't understand why we're following naval tradition, but that's, I guess, a different discussion for a different day. Well, after Kira talks about Sisko finding Bahala in a couple of days, Worf says, your gods have granted the captain a powerful vision.
Oh.
So Worf is all in on this story.
Oh, you gotta love Worf. He just rolls with it and the Bajoran faith. He has a great understanding of what it means. And I think that's really interesting that it would be the Klingon who seems to have the greatest understanding of what the Bajorans believe and how important their faith is to it.
Yeah, it comes up again in a couple of scenes.
Yeah.
Faith matters to him.
Right.
He understands it. He understands the need for it. He doesn't necessarily understand or believe what the Bajorans believe, but he believes in faith.
Yeah.
I think we talked about it before. Belief is in his top 5 strengths for sure.
Yeah. I think he would put his own Klingon take on these things.
Yeah. He'd find parallels.
Why wouldn't they have Tovacor?
Why wouldn't he find parallels? He was in that episode.
And an awesome episode.
At the end of the scene, Kai Winn enters asking for time to chat with Kira, and Odo and Kira wish each other good luck.
Oh, yeah. I've come in to cause some chaos, child.
Well, Kai Winn asks Kira if she thinks the emissary will forgive her for doubting him. She knows now that he truly is the emissary, and she's going to follow the path he lays out.
Okay, what's her angle here?
I'm not sure. This whole scene was a little bit weird.
Yeah.
They have these super close-ups, and there are blurry shots of Kira's face a couple of times. I don't know if it was, if something happened to the print or if they were trying to do this on purpose. It was a very peculiar scene, at least the way it was shot. One interesting part of their conversation, when Kai Winn says those who were in the resistance think they were the only ones who fought the Cardassians and they saved Bajor single-handedly, while she was also in a Cardassian prison camp for 5 years, and she says she remembers each beating she suffered. She says, you had your weapons to protect you, but all I had was my faith and courage. And then she kind of walks off and she says, walk with the prophets, child. It was a very interesting end to that scene.
Yeah, and she said it was because she taught about the prophets, and that's why the Cardassians imprisoned her. I have a few questions here.
Yeah.
First of all, does she have another assassin on the station for Sisko in this point? Is this why she's being conciliatory? Because I don't believe anything she says. And the second one is, I don't believe anything she says, so do you believe any of the story about her being in a prison camp? Because I don't.
I believed all of it. I believe this is the first time that she can't deny Sisko is the emissary because he found Bahala.
Yeah.
And she can't deny that he found it. She has no way of saying, oh, I found it or somebody else found it or whatever. Odo says something about him being lucky, but nobody on Bajor is going to buy that.
Interesting.
So she's lost her ability to deny that Sisko is the emissary. So I believe that part of it. Whether or not this stuff is true about her being beaten in a prison camp, it probably was true. They probably did drag the religious people into a camp. I don't know that they beat them. Who knows with her?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess I bought it. Maybe this is why I like Kai Winn. Maybe I'm an easy mark.
I saw it as I didn't believe her because I think she was just playing her politics.
Yeah, maybe.
At this time, it's useful for her to say, oh, maybe he is the emissary. And I think it would be useful for her to have a backstory as well of, I suffered under the occupation as well.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I don't really believe her. And another thing is, Kira brought up how one of the prophecies talked about only somebody touched by a prophet would find Bahala. I would guarantee she's one of those people who would say, you didn't interpret the prophecy correctly. What it actually meant was. So she could always find a way out of it. And I think this is just her, like you said, she can't deny it. So I'm looking at this thinking, okay, what angle is she going to go for here?
Well, she's definitely working an angle because the whole point of this conversation, supposedly, was to find out if Sisko was going to forgive her or, if she'd played all her cards, basically.
Right.
So I think you could look at it, that's sort of the political part of it. She wants to get some insight from Kira.
Yeah.
Although why she thinks Kira's going to tell her anything, I don't know. The two of them have such a contentious relationship.
Because Kira's going to be honest.
I'm not. Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess she is going to be honest with her. Yeah, that's a good point. Plus, she doesn't have any other minions that are stars on the show.
Yeah, the purple guy doesn't get that kind of info.
Well, we go down to the caves, and Bajorans are working to excavate Bahala. Admiral Watley arrives to find Sisko, and he's annoyed by the vision stuff that Sisko is having. And he's annoyed that Sisko seems to be ignoring his calls.
He tries a little bit of rank pulling on Sisko.
Yeah, he's kind of a jerk.
Yeah.
He really rudely says, just between me and you, how did you find this place? Which is so ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's so inappropriate
Right.
as he's in a cave surrounded by Bajorans, and he's like, nobody's listening, no big deal. Anyway, the Admiral is concerned that Sisko is distracted. Duh. And there are a lot of details someone has to oversee as Bajor enters the Federation. He wants to go back to the station, but Sisko says he can't leave. He's still looking for clarity. The Admiral tells him to report to Dr. Bashir tomorrow at 7 a.m. for a complete physical, and Sisko agrees, and then he has another headache, which he still doesn't mention to anyone.
Right. So something is up. And plus he's not telling Bashir about it, which he was supposed to.
No.
The other thing in this scene is it clearly reinforces that all Starfleet admirals are basically evil jerks. He gives him this stupid speech, and it's like, Sisko's response here should be, dude, I got Bajor into the Federation, and you're giving me this crap. You need me now more than you ever have. Run along, Admiral. I'll call you when I'm not busy. Sisko is in the position of power here, and he should throw it back at that idiot Admiral. How's Bajor going to take it if I resign my commission? Bite me.
You and I do not see the world the same way when it comes to leadership and how to act around other leaders. And how to keep your own nose clean while you are standing in front of other people who can see and hear you. If you're going to say stuff like that, you better do it quietly with nobody else listening.
I think that Admiral displays a fantastic inability to lead.
He's terrible. There's no doubt. I don't agree with your assessment that he's evil. I just think he's inept. He's a terrible leader. He's a perfect example of somebody, again, thinking about working at a giant company where somebody from the head office turns up, they don't know anything, yet somehow they know everything. They know more than you do. Everything you're doing is wrong. They would do it better. How dare you disrespect them? It's just such bluster and garbage. So to me, that's not evil. That's just, he's just a horrible person. And a terrible leader. And if Sisko reacts in the same way, then he goes down to his level. This is where you and I disagree. I don't like to go down to people's levels, but I think you would enjoy that activity.
I have no idea what you mean.
Anyway, the next morning, Sisko is 15 minutes late to his appointment, and the Admiral is annoyed. And Bashir gives the Admiral a bunch of private medical information about Sisko.
Right.
He says there's a very serious surgery that he could perform, but he'd rather not. Plus, Sisko hasn't told him about any new symptoms. Well, you're about to find out about some.
And the other thing here is the Admiral says he knew they'd be in trouble as soon as they let the Bajorans call him the Emissary.
Oh.
And then Julian goes on and has to explain to the Admiral about the Bajorans and how important their faith is and what it means to them.
Mm-hmm.
This Admiral is a waste of space. He's concerned about Bajor entering the Federation. He can't get the names of their lost cities right.
I noticed, yep.
He even called it Bala or something.
Called everything wrong, yep.
He has zero understanding of their faith and what the Bajorans are like.
Mm-hmm.
How does Starfleet function with this level of incompetence at this level?
He's a absolutely typical bureaucrat. I've turned up. I want things the way I want them. We shouldn't have let them call him Emissary. As if you could just tell the Bajorans not to call him Emissary.
Right.
He has no understanding of anything. Yeah, a waste of space is right. He's there for the photo op.
Yeah, he's one of those guys who's been successfully commanding a desk at Starfleet and has probably just been there long enough that he gets the promotion.
He is going to take full credit as well when the Bajorans get in.
Oh.
Yeah, he's there for the photo op and to say, look what I did.
You absolutely know it. Yeah.
Well, then we do see Sisko coming through the promenade, and he's randomly giving people advice like a prophet. But then he's like, you should go home. You don't belong here. I thought that one was funny. And the guy's like, okay. And he leaves. And the crops are going to be fine. And
oh, this was so great. The look on Avery's face when he's doing this. It's like he is the emissary.
For the first time.
Yeah. And I'm fascinated by what's the story with this guy that he said, you don't belong here, go home. I would love to know the backstory here.
Yeah, I don't know. We don't get any more than that. And he just leaves. He doesn't say a word.
Yeah.
But obviously, he was questioning whether or not he should have left home or something. And
yeah, I really bought into Sisko here.
Well, he does get another really severe headache. And before he goes into the infirmary, he tells the Admiral, your son, you can stop worrying about him. He forgives you. And the Admiral is like, oh, what? How did he know that? And Bashir says, well, he's the emissary.
Beautiful response. Boom.
Yeah, like, duh, get with the program. Everybody here knows that.
So I guess this is all the clarity that Sisko's been feeling.
I guess so. I don't quite understand how he sees the paths of individuals, but we don't get a lot of explanation about what happens. But suddenly a bunch of things are clear to him.
I jumped back to Sisko's comment to Kira when he was having the sacred vision. Because he said, I can see the past, the future.
Oh, right. He said he could see everything.
So maybe he's seeing pieces of it. And this is what he's passing on to people.
He's turning into Q.
Oh. That wouldn't be good for Jean-Luc.
No, for anybody. In the infirmary now, Bashir is running tests while the Admiral and Major Kira hover over Sisko. Sisko says, Cardassia. That's where the cloud was going. He says he was on Bajor. Valhalla had been rebuilt. The people were in the streets celebrating. But then a shadow covered the sun, and we looked up at the cloud, and it was a swarm of locusts, billions of them. And just as quickly as they came, they moved on, and they were moving to Cardassia. And Kira's like, well, it seems like a good thing that the locusts were moving away from Bajor.
Yeah, the Cardassians can have them.
Yeah, exactly. But Sisko doesn't yet know what it all means. The Admiral says it was just a dream and doesn't mean anything. Whatley is totally over this emissary nonsense.
In denial.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is what the visions that lead to the prophecies that the various Vedics or Bajorans have written over the years. That this is kind of what they're like.
I bet.
Of them making these, I saw a shadow cover the sun and it was locusts. So you're reading it and going, I wonder what this could mean.
Well, maybe because he's still trying to get clarity.
Yeah.
Which probably means, what does it all mean? How does it all actually connect? How does it connect to me? Instead, he's getting these little visions that he can say out loud or he can just see for a flash.
Right. Yeah.
And then they're gone. Yeah.
So that's why I wonder this is the bigger picture of this is what all the Bajoran prophecies are like.
Well, Bashir interrupts to scold Sisko for not telling him about the headaches. The area of unusual activity in his brain has increased by 8%, and he says, your basal ganglia are starting to depolarize, and I'm going to have to operate. No character in the history of television has ever said the word ganglia more than Julian Bashir.
10 out of 10 to Julian for getting that medical technobabble out. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, he has a lot of it. Yeah, now that I think about it, they did use the word ganglia on Discovery with Saru and the threat ganglia.
Oh, that's true.
But that was gone after season 2. We never heard it again.
Julian laid the foundations and the base work for the heavy use of ganglia.
Totally. Well, Sisko asks if the surgery will impact his visions, and Bashir has no idea. but he assumes his brain activity will return to normal and then the visions will stop. And Sisko doesn't want the operation. He says something extraordinary is happening to him and he wants to see it through.
Yeah. I will make a side note here. Bashir does say he could die. He doesn't necessarily say he will.
That's true, but the Admiral certainly thinks he will. I guess the Admiral just wants the visions to stop.
Yeah, what does the Admiral know?
He's useless.
He can't even pronounce Bajoran city names.
Now we go to Sisko trying to explain this all to Jake. He says the visions are gifts and he can't refuse them. But Cassidy doesn't understand how these mystical visions could be more important than watching his son grow up. And Jake doesn't think the visions could be worth dying for. And then Sisko says when Jake was born, he could see his whole life in front of him. And now the entire universe is that baby that he's holding in his arms. And it was like, uh-oh.
Yes. And he needs time to study its face. I honestly loved this.
Yeah.
It was a great use of metaphor to explain what he was experiencing. And again, I go back to, is this the way Bajoran prophecies are written? Or perhaps all of the Bajoran teachings? That it's a heavy use of metaphor. I thought this was great storytelling.
Well, in comes Kai Winn saying the Emissary has asked for help on his journey and she's here to provide it. And Jake is like, you trust her now?
The Emissary accidentally fell from the promenade while Kai Winn was helping him. Oops.
Yeah, it is hard to know exactly what help she's going to provide.
Yeah.
Sisko says it will be all right, and he tells Cassidy and Jake that he loves them before going off with Winn.
Wow, he's not wasting any time with Cassidy, is he?
He is not. Then we go to Ops, and Kira says there are lots of people at the temple praying for the Emissary, and Dax is worried, but Major Kira says the Emissary is not going to die. The prophets will take care of him. Miles isn't convinced.
Neither is Dax.
Worf tells Kira not to try and convince the non-believers. Sisko's faith is strong, so he will prevail. Dax doesn't think that's much to bet his life on, but Kira says she's wrong. It's everything.
This side of Worf, again, coming out is just priceless. I really enjoyed this version of Worf that we're seeing here, because he gives this whole speech about, do not try to convince them. They do not understand. What I believe in is faith. Without it, there will be no victory. It's perfect Worf. It really goes back to what the fundamentals of this character is.
Yeah.
When we are victorious, they will sing songs in our honor. That's Worf.
Yeah.
He has a total understanding of the Bajoran faith, because that's him.
Well, he doesn't have a total understanding of the Bajoran faith. He has a total acceptance of faith in general.
We're saying the same thing. I think he understands faith and what the Bajorans believe. Not necessarily the details, but he understands the core.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all I mean. I don't think he understands all the details, but yeah, he understands the need for it and he understands how important it is to them and he respects it.
Yeah.
Which is funny because he doesn't always respect what other people have to say.
I guess that falls under one of those things that you can really relate to.
Yeah, it's important. This is important to him, so he gets it. I really like this conflict between people who know and respect each other. They're not willing to go into the mud and have a real knockdown, drag-out fight about it. Though it's clear that we're debating science and faith.
Yes.
I've had similar sort of on-the-edge conversations in the workplace where you kind of know where each other is on a topic, but you don't want to start throwing mud at each other. So you just go, yeah, okay, that's interesting. And then you just move on, which is a very sort of adult way to deal with it in the workplace. So I love this little scene. It was only, maybe a minute. It was over really quickly, but maybe what I got out of it was a little bit different from what you're saying. But I agree. I thought the scene was awesome.
Yes. I think what you saw there was a difference between Bajoran faith, the Federation, and also the other side of the Federation, which is Worf's values.
Yeah. Yep. Now we go to Kai Winn saying a little prayer as Sisko kneels before the orb of prophecy. He has another severe headache.
Yeah, she actually tries to talk him out of it.
Yeah, she's definitely worried, but he doesn't want to stop. He says he has to do it now, and she leaves him to open the doors of the migraine trigger. I mean, he's already getting all these migraines. It's only going to get worse from here.
That's true. Well, you could look at it as, I've already got a migraine. This won't do any more damage.
Oh, ugh. I don't even like saying the word migraine. It makes me slightly nauseous.
Because I don't trust anything that Kai Winn is doing. I worry that Kai Winn was being disingenuous with her concern. She didn't care whether the Emissary lived or died. But at the same time, I was wondering if she was concerned if the Emissary died, then she couldn't use him to manipulate events. I find her motivation so impossible to determine.
Well, you know more about her than I do. I only have what she's done up till this point. I don't know what she's done after this. But I do think she wants to know what he knows. Because maybe she can use that info.
You're so right.
I think when she was saying you could wait or you could rest, I don't think it was for his benefit. I still think it was for hers.
Oh, look what you did to Bareil.
Yeah, well, that was slightly different. But definitely, I've been thinking about Bareil a lot during this episode.
Yeah.
Here, I feel like she feels like there's more she can get out of him yet.
Yeah.
Whereas she was done with Bareil. She had done everything she needed to, and she was like, who cares?
Can we turn the machine off now?
Yeah.
But it's the same base. It's for her benefit.
I don't dispute it. In the wardroom, a bunch of Bajorans and Starfleet types have arrived for the signing, but somehow no Shakaar. Where's the president?
I'm surprised they didn't have a 20-minute argument about who should be sitting where at the table.
They probably did. We just didn't see it. Admiral Whatley is annoyed that Sisko is already an hour late, and Kai Winn isn't helping by saying, consulting the orb can take hours or days. She agrees to proceed without the emissary, which surprised me. So the Admiral starts his speech, but Sisko stumbles in pretty quickly. But he shoves the Admiral out of the way and he shouts, Locusts! They'll destroy Bajor unless it stands alone. He says it's too soon. Bajor must not join the Federation or it will be destroyed. And then he dramatically collapses and he starts convulsing on the floor.
I wish we'd seen more reactions to the people in the room. I think that would be okay.
Yeah, I guess we're not signing this thing.
Yeah.
Now in the infirmary, Bashir says Sisko's entire central nervous system is depolarizing, and they need to operate immediately. The Admiral is like, do it, but Kira points out it isn't his decision because Sisko made it clear it wasn't what he wanted. Bashir says it's really Jake's decision. And so now we see Jake tell his unconscious dad that he needs him, and he says, I'm sorry, and then he tells Bashir to do what he has to do. Later on the promenade, Kai Winn asks Kira for an update on the emissary who is still in surgery. She says she hopes the prophets will forgive us. We never should have allowed the Federation to interfere with the emissary's visions.
Oh, wow.
This is where she sounds like the Admiral now.
Yes. This is where we see the full Kai Winn.
Because she was waiting to get more info, I'm telling you.
Yep.
But Kira says it wasn't the Federation, it was his son, and he had every right to make that decision. It was a selfish act, Kai Winn says.
Yep.
Winn says if it were her decision, she would have trusted the prophets. But Kira says maybe this is part of the prophets' plan. And of course, this is the big part of the problem. You can always say whatever it is. It's the will of the prophets. Kai Winn says the Council of Ministers has voted to delay Federation membership. Kira looks disappointed, but I would think she would want to follow what Sisko said.
Yeah, she'd already said they would do anything he asked of them.
Maybe it's hard to know if Sisko's thought was complete before he passed out. Maybe she wanted to hear the whole sentence or hear the whole vision or something first.
Oh, true.
But anyway, then Kai Winn says, before Captain Sisko found Bahala, my path was clear. I knew who my enemies were, but now nothing is certain. I mean, what is she talking about?
Well, Sisko was her enemy. Kira was her enemy. Anyone who stood in her way.
I guess so. And now she doesn't know.
Exactly.
That's a crazy line. I paused there for a long time and I'm like, well, okay, is she saying that she knew that Sisko was her enemy or she knew the Federation was her enemy? What exactly did she mean?
I think she meant precisely that. Sisko was her enemy. I mean, she always disrespected him. She never called him the emissary, unless it was almost in a condescending way.
Well, she called him emissary.
Oh,
just
she would always
when she
swap
wanted
back.
to.
Yes.
Yeah, she swapped back all the time.
You could see the air quotes when she said emissary.
Emissary.
And we see that straight jump back to what kind of person that Kai Winn is. Calling Jake saving his father a selfish act. It's more like, I'd let anybody die if it served my purpose. Oh, just like your former boyfriend. What was his name? Barry, right?
Barry. Vedic Barry. Poor Bareil.
This to me shows what is at the heart of her character. People are tools to be used.
At the same time, if you had devoted your life to a religion and you truly felt in your heart, even if your heart was black, that you made decisions according to the religion and you gave yourself completely to it and you gave up everything else, you probably would feel that way. You would probably feel like he's making a decision about a religious icon in my religion. I would never do that. How selfish of him.
Yeah.
So I always think there's something to it, what she's saying, but it doesn't mean that she's not a horrible person. Because it's clearly about her and what she wants.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. But I like to defend Kai Winn because it seems to make people crazy. Because I think she's great. Not as a human, or a Bajoran, but, as a character, I think she's great. And an actress.
She's a fantastic character.
Oh my gosh.
Played so well.
Played so well.
Yeah. Maybe we're jumping ahead here, but...
Well, we're almost to the end.
The thing I think about Kai Winn is the portrayal of this character is so on point. She's believable.
Oh, completely.
You could imagine a person in this situation being just like that and saying those kind of things. And Louise Fletcher makes it work.
Totally. Every time she says child, I get goosebumps.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, she's very effective. Well, Sisko wakes up and immediately says, no, you took them away. Bashir says, we had no choice. And Sisko says, I almost had it. I almost understood it all, and now it's gone.
Just have to feel for him.
I don't know. Having suffered migraines most of my adult life, I'm not sure I would vote to keep them, even if they somehow came with clarity.
Yeah, they don't come with clarity, though, do they?
No, they do not. Well, later in his office, Sisko looks at the painting of Bahala when the Admiral comes in and says it's not too late for Sisko to change the ministers' minds. But Sisko says he can't do that. The visions may have faded, but he's still certain this isn't the right time for Bajor to join the Federation. Whatley says, I can have your commission for this, but then we'd probably lose Bajor forever. Yeah, it's about time you figured that out.
Bite me, Admiral.
Sisko is sure Bajor will join the Federation one day, so the Admiral says he'll keep the champagne on ice.
Yeah. Scurry back to Starfleet and shuffle some files.
Yep. So they didn't make him leave with that two evil things still hanging over him. He just became the inept guy.
That's true.
Back to the Sisko quarters, Jake and Cassidy made dinner as a welcome back for both Cassidy and Sisko. She says, I can't understand what you've gone through, and I know you feel that you lost something important. But she says, you've also held on to something important. And she puts Jake's hand into his. Ugh. That was a tough ending.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I know this wasn't what you wanted, but get over it, dude.
And then Sisko picks up her hand and puts it on with theirs. It was such a great scene.
Yeah.
And I think the scene hints at now they're a family.
I do think that's what it was trying to hint at, yes. But like it always is in episodic TV, we get over things super quickly. So by next week, he'll have forgotten all about this and they'll be happy. They'll live happily ever after until the end of that episode.
What visions?
Yeah, what visions? Oh my gosh. The end. Well, I assume you have some overanalysis.
I think the first thing we have to start off with here is Jake needs to be recognized for the hero he is. This is the second time he's saved Ben Sisko's life.
Maybe he's also an emissary to the prophets or something to the prophets. He's
another person the Bajoran should hold in high esteem because he keeps on saving the emissary's life.
No, it's a good point.
At least he didn't have to die to save him this time.
He didn't have to go through a whole lifetime of agony and then die. That's true.
Right. Well, leading on from that, did Jake do the right thing?
Wow. I have no idea.
Really?
As the son, yes. Of course he did the right thing. Because what they don't really know, what nobody knows, maybe Kai Winn knows, but nobody knows, was he really just having fake visions or, was it something that wasn't real because his brain was impacted by the electrical shock? And they know that he's had a connection to the prophets before.
Right.
So maybe it was just some kind of a connection again to those aliens, if you don't think that they're prophets.
Yeah.
So he can't take that risk of, clearly he has now turned into a prophet of the Bajoran religion.
Yeah.
So I should just let this play out. There's really no way that would make any sense from his son's perspective. If somebody like Kira were making the decision, I could see maybe you would have a discussion or some different thoughts.
Right.
Or if his son was Bajoran and was raised on Bajor, whatever, so they were part of the religion. But from Jake's point of view, of course, it was the right decision.
Yeah, I would agree with you saying yes. I think Jake made the right call here. I also have an additional theory here, which is I think the underlying problem is Sisko would have only got it when he actually died. I think that was the final step.
Yeah.
He's starting to see this clarity and things are coming into focus. And the problem is death was the final point.
It probably was. Maybe, I don't know, but maybe he is supposed to die and ascend into being one of the prophets. So maybe that was the last step, and maybe until that happens, he'll never have that clarity.
Right,
Yeah.
because he's still
I hadn't thought about
mortal or corporeal.
Right. He's still the Sisko. He's not a prophet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Next thing.
Yeah.
And we kind of talked about this. Kai Winn, is she genuine? Is she telling the truth? I'm going with no, because nothing she does is genuine and it's always on her agenda.
I think she's telling the truth.
Interesting.
We've had this conversation before when you've asked, is she telling the truth? And I've said yes and you've said no.
Yeah.
I can't explain it. I'm under her spell.
You totally are.
I'm Neela.
Oh my gosh.
Although I don't find Miles attractive.
So you'd be open to murder Kai Winn's rivals. Okay.
No. I'm not going to murder anybody, but no. I really wouldn't.
Okay, next thing.
Yeah.
Is this a side effect of his exposure to the prophets?
Yeah, I imagine so. I did wonder if even that electrical impulse was all part of it. That wasn't really an accident. It was all something that was meant to happen. He was maybe meant to get a little bit more clarity, or at this point, he was meant to strengthen his belief that he's the emissary and that he's part of this. But he has this weird obsession with Bajoran stuff.
Completely.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just because it's the old stuff that he has access to on the station. Like, if this station were close to some other planet, would he be obsessed with their old stuff? Or is there something about Bajor? But I don't know.
Yeah, he is very reverential towards the Bajoran artifacts. And seeing here with this painting where he was very excited to actually see it.
But even just the historical stuff that's not necessarily religious.
Right.
Yeah, he's been very into.
Building the lightship.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's funny that you bring up maybe this was the prophets, because that's the other thing at the back of my mind with this, which is this one of those clunky ways that the prophets do things? They can't just say to him, don't let Bajor join the Federation yet.
Yeah, don't do that.
Because in whatever bizarre, non-corporeal way.
Non-linear.
Yeah, the prophets are going, this is a brilliant idea, makes total sense.
Yeah, I assume so.
I think we're on the same page there, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Next one. My final point. Are we seeing in Sisko here some of that obsessive nature that we saw in Jake? And not just the Visitor, but in some of the other episodes. And Sisko is displaying that here.
Oh, definitely.
Is it a family trait?
Yeah, I think so. I think he has that obsessive nature, and it comes out every now and then. He's just maybe more mature than Jake and has more control over it generally. But he was very obsessed here. Yeah.
I would agree. And that, I think, wraps it up for my overanalysis.
Well, I have a handful of points in my overanalysis. Some of them I guess we've already talked about, but I'll go over them anyway. We'll see if they need more discussion. The first one is the coming Dominion War. Okay.
I'm not saying anything.
How did Kira not remember that as soon as she got out of the room and told everybody what he said? We just glossed over it and we never brought it up again. I thought that was a little bit crazy.
If you're talking about visions, that's kind of an important one.
Right? I think I've heard the phrase Dominion War before, so that didn't really spoil it for me, but at the same time, it's like, whoa, if you were watching this live, I think you would really have been shocked by that.
My memory of that is reacting like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah, wait, what?
Because I was paying very close attention to this show at the time.
My second one is Kai Winn finally saying that she believes Sisko is the true emissary, and also that she'll do what he says. And then, of course, she's super happy that he says what she's been saying all along, which is that it's too soon. I think this just enforces her belief that she's the true religious leader. I was right all along. It just took a while until everybody else saw that I was right.
Wow. I really love that interpretation. That perfectly fits with her. See, I was right. All of you were wrong.
Exactly.
I knew I was interpreting the will of the prophets correctly.
But what a cool use of Kai Winn this episode was.
Yes.
You know, we haven't seen her for a really long time. And so to bring her in for this, I thought she was great. I thought the use of the character was great. If she hadn't been part of this, it would have really taken away the impact, I think, of this thing that was going on with Sisko. Kira wouldn't have been enough. It needed more heft behind it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's where the episode of Session could have really been even more impactful if Winn had been part of that conversation.
Totally. Yeah, totally.
I mean, it was a great episode. I loved it. But I think you could have made that from an 8 to a 9.5 if you brought her, maybe even a 10.
Yeah. It's so interesting to think about Sisko having access to a higher plane of consciousness and having to weigh that against the value of his own life.
Right.
Even if what he's seeing is real, and there seems to be evidence that it is, should he accept the suffering and the pain that it's causing, not only to himself, but to those around him?
Yeah.
And after what Jake did to save him in The Visitor, maybe we have to consider that this is part of Jake's journey too.
Oh.
Just like you said earlier, he saved him in The Visitor, he saved him here. So now Jake is somehow interwoven into this whole journey. So we kind of touched on that, but that was one of the points that I had in my overanalysis.
I think there's another side of it as well, which I really hadn't considered until you said that.
Yeah.
Maybe Sisko was starting to ascend, and part of the problem was he was losing focus on mortality, on the people around him.
Oh, totally. Yes, totally.
And the human level of being was becoming meaningless to him.
Yeah.
He needed Jake to pull him down back to reality because it was going to kill him.
I did feel that way at one point in the story where now he's focused on that next thing that, you know, he kept saying the clarity. He's so focused on that, he's forgotten that he's got a kid, that he's got a girlfriend, that he had a whole other life before. But there's something about this that he sees as bigger and more important. And that's where you can say, okay, but he had some kind of brain damage. So was that real?
Yeah.
Or is it just that he really was about to ascend to something and maybe that's still something that will come later for him? Just so interesting.
I would suggest, given the story to this point, it was an ascension.
Yep. My last overanalysis point is about Kai Winn knowing who her enemies were. And we talked about that a little bit, where you think it's Sisko and Kira, basically. And maybe it is, but I don't know why she would say that to Kira. I'm not always sure why she says what she says to Kira, though.
Interesting.
Was she saying the Federation? I just found that so interesting. We didn't explore it. I hope it comes up again.
Perhaps she was saying it to Kira because it puts Kira off balance.
Yeah, it's a good point.
I see everything coming out of Kai Winn's mouth as some kind of bear trap.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe I'm overanalyzing it, and it's really just that.
Well, that's a nice thing about the writing here. It could be...
And the acting.
Anything.
True. Well, we can go to women in the future, but I really don't have anything to say. I mean, yay, Kai Winn is here, but there's nothing really on this topic in this episode. So I'm just going to jump to rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
Absolute thumbs up. Love this episode. Avery Brooks is fantastic here. The way he portrays Sisko going through this religious epiphany, it's really great to watch him because he really gets his teeth into it. And the way he projects this serenity that he's experiencing, great acting. Louise Fletcher is just so wonderful. I see a jealousy with her of Sisko is everything she can't be.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Thoroughly enjoyed this episode. This is an episode I can watch multiple times and enjoy it every single time.
Oh, I can see why. I definitely love this episode. Probably my favorite of the season. My thumb is way up. It was funny, after my first watching of it, I thought maybe Avery Brooks's performance was a little uneven. I was like, I don't get it. This doesn't make any sense to me. He seems sort of disengaged here, and then he seems like he cared. But then, of course, when I watched it the second time, I was like, oh, that's what's happening to the character. Okay, that was just my own small mind not picking up what he was actually trying to show and to portray. And so I actually liked it so much more after the second time. And that doesn't always happen when I watch these episodes twice.
It's definitely an episode you can take something away from multiple viewings.
Oh, I totally agree. So great episode.
Yay. What do you think about it in terms of a Star Trek episode?
I guess I don't have a problem with it as a Star Trek episode because it didn't try to suck all hope out of my being. Or out of everything. I mean, yes, at the end it was sad and you felt like he really thought he was going to get something else, but it was still hopeful, right? They ended on a hopeful note of him recognizing that he still had his family. But you also can think about how it just again shows how tied he is to this religion, how tied he is to Bajor, to the wormhole aliens or the prophets. So I think it was interweaving into this larger arc that is still there, but we're not crippled by it.
Yeah.
We can still just move on now, and I'm sure we will for a while and not even reference this.
Right.
But we can easily come back to it. And it has so many ways that it can impact Kira, that it can impact Kai Winn, the way the Bajorans look to him, even the way he reacts to any sort of small thing when he has a premonition or deja vu. How is he going to react to that?
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a little bit like Picard becoming Locutus.
Oh.
Where the tendrils are there. Maybe we pick it up later. It was in the movie with him.
Yep.
But we're going to carry on as if nothing happened, is my guess. So I think it works for me as Star Trek.
Yeah, very Star Trek.
Okay, that does it for Season 5, Episode 10. Come back next week for Episode 11. In the meantime, if you'd like to send us your own over-analysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, you can email us at rebingeit@gmail.com or tweet us at rebingeit. We're also on Instagram and YouTube at rebingeit. And you can check us out on talkthroughmedia.com, where you can listen to our Prodigy podcast, which is currently on hiatus, but will be back later this year. And you can listen to all the other Star Trek podcasts in our network.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.